Hello and welcome to the Oddschecker betting show. This is your Royal Ascot Day 3 preview, Thursday's racing from Royal Ascot, sponsored by Tote. I'm your host, George Ellick. Delighted to be joined, as I was for Days 1 and Day 2, Andy Holding and Jamie Benson. Jamie, we're recording this about 11 o'clock on Monday. Last night was England 1, Serbia 0. Anyone who listened to the Day 1 preview hopefully would have had their bet on the England game and will now be getting £1 play spot.
Yeah, absolutely right. It's all you do is bet £5 on any England game and you get £1 free play spot for every goal they score, which frankly last night could have been a lot more. Maybe should have been a lot more. Certainly after the first half an hour, I thought this was looking like a nice little earner. But we'll take the 1-0, we'll take the victory, and I'll certainly take the £1 free play spot. So that will be going for the rest of the tournament as well. So anytime England play, just have a £5 on the game. It doesn't have to be on England. It can be on any of the markets and bet builders and the like. And you get your free £1 play spot if England score.
Should mention here as well that Tote are sponsoring the Oddschecker betting show for all 5 previews for Royal Ascot, and some great stuff going on over there. We had a big discussion before the Day 1 preview about the World Pool, which will inform a lot of Jamie's selections over the course of the week. So, we're not going to go through it all again, but if you do want to learn more about the World Pool, go and check out the first kind of 5 minutes or so from the Day 1 episode, where Jamie gives a good explainer. Andy, we are getting to Ascot week in 24 hours or so. The car parks will be filling up, picnics will be starting, champagne corks will be flying across the park. I'll be getting there a couple of hours later. But weather-wise, having looked like it was going to be not ideal in terms of the forecast, things seem to have cleared up a bit.
Yeah, it's often the case, isn't it? We sort of we look through we look in advance, and we always put a bit of a pessimistic hat on, just in case it does turn the opposite way. But I think Ascot, it's one of those tracks that tends to sort of miss out on any amount of appreciable rain. You look at Sandown on Saturday, and it was bouncing off the roof, and the ground changed quite appreciably, as it did at various other tracks. But looks as though the Boxer venue's missed out, which is, in all intents and purposes, I think, good for everyone. We just want nice ground, don't we? I don't like it when it changes one day and then you look at the forecast and it goes soft another day, and your mind scrambled. Particularly like for podcasts like this, when you want a bit of continuity. You're thinking, right, okay, it's going to be good ground, good to firm ground all the way through the week. We know what we're playing with, rather than sort of having caveats. This opinion might change if this happens. I think it's really good, not only for us, but for racegoers and punters in general throughout the course of the week.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's get stuck into the racing. We should say, because we're recording this on Monday, when it comes to our Day 3, 4 and 5 previews, we don't have final decks, therefore we don't have the draw, and the races will cut up a fair bit. And it comes with, of course, the caveat that if you do have your place your bet before final decks, anti-post rules do apply. So if your horse comes out, sadly, the bet will be a loser rather than void. We're going to be going through the Oddschecker grids as ever and talking through the best prices on there. So make sure you download the Oddschecker app for the best prices, best place terms, which is always essential for Royal Ascot, and the free bets and offers you can find there, as well as Andy's tips, amongst other tips, is straight to the app. And of course, check out the Tote as well for your Tote betting across there too. Kicking off with the Norfolk, and Whistlejacket is the 6-4 favourite here, ahead of Shareholder at 8-1, Treasure Isle 12-1, Celtic Chieftain 14-1, Shadow Army 14-1, Sirius 14-1, 16-1, Midnight Strike, and Gabaldon and Milford and Arizona Blaze also 16-1, as a Saturday Fleur and Evening Saigon 20-1 bar those. And Andy, in the Day 1 preview, we spoke about Cowder the County in the Coventry, and you'd think the price, 6-4 now, but the price of Whistlejacket on the day will probably be fairly influenced by what happens in that Coventry, given the way their two form lines tie in together on debut.
Yeah, without doubt, George. I'd say that form line is one of the pivotal races coming into Royal Ascot, really, as regards Irish sort of juvenile form. They looked 2 good colts on the day when they clashed the Curragh back in April. Whistlejacket's subsequently gone on to win at a higher level next time out. We haven't seen Cowder the County up until then, as mentioned on the Tuesday podcast, but hopefully he'll run well in the Coventry. I don't see any reason why he won't. And Whistlejacket has looked a more speedier type, didn't he? He did on debut when he showed that pace to lead and get over. He knew his job and he looked very professional at the Curragh. And I think the drop back in trip was the key to him next time out. They ride him a bit more aggressively and make plenty of use of his natural pace. This was always going to be the race for him. Sometimes Aidan switches around and runs some of his lesser lights, if you like, in the Windsor Castle. But it's not to be this case. He's going with Whistle Jacket, all guns blazing in this race. This is the classier of the 2-5 furlong juvenile races for the Colts. So quite rightly, he's favourite. I think there's a couple of other horses to sort of mention. Again, I don't know whether they're going to be going in other races. I haven't seen the full decks for Wednesday yet, and the Windsor Castle entries might have a little bit of an effect on what I'm going to be mentioning here. But Richard Fahey's got two very nice colts of himself this season as well. He's got a horse that won at York, beating Francisco's Pride, and the name escapes me. I can't quite remember what his name is now. Shadow Army, sorry, that's the one, which Walham Racing have bought in the interim. I think he's a very smart horse. He missed the break at York. He was about 4 or 5 lengths behind a good field that day, including Francesco's Pride. He ran down Francesco's Pride, who's gone on to win at pattern level subsequently. The back end sectionals for that race as well were very, very impressive. From 3 out, Shadow Army was a second quicker than the 2 sprint handicaps at York on the same card, including the Duke of York. So we've got a really good guide there. You've got the Duke of York did 35.3, and you've got Shadow Army who did 34.3 off the back of a strongly run juvenile race. He comes out really well on the numbers, Shadow Army. He's a big, imposing colt as well. I think 5 furlongs, stiff track's ideal for him. So it depends on what race he runs in, how I'll attack this race. If he goes Windsor Castle, I'll play him. If he runs here, I'll definitely be having an interest in him. And the other one's called Loom. Again, he was very impressive on the Clark and Vigilly last time out at Ripon, hitting the line really strong. The key to him was also dropping back down in trip from 6 furlongs to 5, similar to Whistle Jacket on debut. But when he didn't quite get home, he was a bit too keen at York. But over that quicker 5 furlongs at Ripon, they held him up and he came through incredibly strong. Again, beating a really highly regarded horse of Walham Racing, who finished second. So my strategy would be not to really back Whistle Jacket at that price. Not really my kind of betting medium. But I'll be looking to do whichever one runs out of the 2 Richard Fahey horses, i.e. Shadow Army or Loom.
Shadow Army 14-1 with a few firms. Loom 20-1. But as Andy says, worth sitting on these for now and waiting to see, which engagements are taken up by the Fahey team for those 2. But worth putting in your Royal Ascot notebook either way. Jamie, how do you see this?
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree on Shadow Army. I'm a really big fan of his. I thought he was so impressive on debut at York. He's jocked up, the Doyler's jocked up in the Windsor Castle at the moment, so I'd expect he might be decked for that. And he's only a 5-1 shot there. But I'd really, without doing too many spoilers, he'd be my fancy in the Windsor Castle as well. But my idea of an interesting horse at the price here would be Milford for Carl Burke. He won on debut at Hamilton very impressively. I'm not sure he beat all that much, but the way he did it was, oh God, sorry, dogs are going mental in the background. The way he did it was so impressive that I couldn't help but love him. He will still have it to prove on form terms, but Clifford Lee and Carl Burke were 7 out of 9 at Royal Ascot last year in terms of beating the SP with the Whirlpool. So you'll get value there. He'll be at price. He's around 16s at the moment. And I can just see him running a big price. He might run a big race. He might be overlooked a bit, not quite the sexy jockey bookings of some of the other horses. And,
Clifford Lee.
Yeah. Clifford Lee's sexy in his own way. Don't you worry. But yeah, and the key. Also, what will be interesting here is where we see the draw, because Saturday Flirt will go $1 million for Wesley Ward, and I think you want to be drawn near his. And so ultimately, if Milford is drawn near Saturday Flirt, I'll just become even more confident. So Milford at 16s for me.
Yeah, Milford, one of Carl Burke's stellar team of 2-year-olds heading to Royal Ascot. And yeah, as Jamie says, could be a big price on the Whirlpool through Tote there if you want to maximise your value. On to the second race on the card now, which is the King George Handicap, King George V, with Going Distance and Chantilly, both the 8-1 joint favourites ahead of Poneros at 9-1, London City 10-1. Persica and French Duke, and 4-0 Fever and Gallantly Approval, all 12-1. Again, with the handicaps this stage, Jamie, we're kind of guessing the draws are going to be so important. It's a very provisional first look, but who looks to you to be one to keep an eye on over the next couple of days at least?
Yeah, you're right. There are still so many unknowns. However, in spite of all that, and foolhardily, I actually really strongly fancy one in this race already.
Nice.
At 16-1, that's Gilded Water, for the same connections who won this race last year. I mean, last year it was Desert Hero, who was a significant overpay on the Tote, paid 4 points bigger with the Tote than it did with SP. And I can see connections aiming the exact same coup all over again this year. He'll be making his handicap debut, and I suspect when they saw a mark of 92 after he won his maiden by 7.5 lengths last time, they couldn't quite believe their eyes. And there's just got to be every chance that he is well ahead of it. He could yet be a group horse. The form of that maiden winner, Shepstone, hasn't really amounted to that much, but there are a couple of 75 to 80 odd types in behind. There's decent form level, but it's not, there are no superstars in behind. But off 92, he must be chucked in. I also saw in an interview with Tom Marquand where he said this was a horse this was his chance that he was looking forward to the most for the week, which I thought was interesting given how many top rides he'll have. But yeah, Gilded Water will probably overpay in the Tote if last year is anything to go by, given the massive overpay. And at 16-1, I just thought he was an absolutely screaming bet.
Forgive me if this is a stupid question, but does Gilded Water being owned by His Majesty the King and Her Majesty the Queen, does that impact the Whirlpool?
So traditionally, it absolutely would. In all domestic racing, outside the Whirlpool, any king/queen runner will be overbet in the pool because obviously all the popular people, also all the people know the Queen and the King and want their horses to win the race. But because there's such a huge amount of Hong Kong money in the pool, they don't actually, as much as they are familiar with the King, they don't seem to overbet them as much. They are far more based on jockeys, and they're also a bit more of an informed. The average Hong Kong punter is a bit more informed or familiar with racing at least, so they believe jockeys are the way to go. It's funny. I was surprised as well. I would have thought that they would underpay, but no. I mean, Desert Hero last year was proof in itself, a massive overpay on him. So I'm hoping for the same again.
Someone needs to get hold of His Majesty the King and make sure he downloads the Tote app ahead of Royal Ascot. So yeah, Gilded Water, no more 16s about, I'm afraid. It's a bit of a sea of blue on oddschecker. 14-1 is the best you're going to get, as short as 10s in a few places as well.
Quoting prices that aren't there.
Andy?
Yeah, two of my sort of main betting strategies of the entire week with regards to handicaps are on the Thursday. They're two of my favourite races as well to get stuck into as well. Traditionally, I absolutely love the King George handicap. I think they're just fascinating affairs. You've got so many potential improvers having either just 3 or 4 runs, so you don't really know what kind of level of improvement they're capable of. And they usually bet 7 or 8 to 1 the field. So it's kind of like pays your money, takes your choice. I'm a big fan of that London Gold Cup form. I think the horse that won it, King's Gambit, I think has gone for something like £1.5 million to new owners and runs in a group race later on the week. He's a genuine bona fide pattern horse in the making. I've no doubt about that. I think he'll probably be favourite to win his race later on in the week. And I wanted to get with the form subsequently. I tipped Persica the other day at Epsom, and he did really well to defy stall 12 of 12 at the Surrey track. So there's a small indication that form is going to work out as well as the time figure suggested it would. Into Battle didn't really get the clearest of runs on rain softening ground at Sandown on Saturday, but he still ran reasonably well despite not getting a great ride by Safi Osborne. So again, another small sample size of that race at Newbury is really good. So without waffling on too much, I'm getting to the point here with Pony Ross, who I thought ran an extraordinary race at Newbury. He was held about the back door. He made a massive big race manoeuvre to hit the front, approaching the furlong pole. And the effort to get there rather sucked the life out of him. And King's Gambit, who was travelling just as well or better in behind, had the better turn of foot in the end. I don't think there was any Shaman finished second to a horse who's now rated at 109 or 110 or something like that. Pony Ross gets the run here off 92, which I think is more than workable. And I do like Rafe Beckett in these 3-year-old handicaps. He just has a key and a knack time and time again, year after year, of getting these horses to improve through the ranks. Where this horse will end up, I don't know. And whether 1.25 miles might be his best trip, that's another moot point. This is 1.5 miles, and he's got to prove himself. But he's proving himself in a strongly run 1.25 miles environment. And if he gets the draw on the day, I think he'll have more know-how of what's to be expected because he's running one of these kind of events before. Whereas I think it could be a little bit of a culture shock for one or two of them that have kind of like been piddling around in maiden races, and this will be like, whoa, what the hell's happening here? Whereas this lad, he's already had his nose blooded. The other one to mention as well, I'm not sure I'll get in. I mean, he's number 33 on the list, but if he was to, and that's East India Dock. Now, I'd probably want to point you in the direction of that form at Doncaster rather than anything else. I'm amazed that Connections aren't running the winner, Wild Waves, either in this or the Queen's Vase. I thought the Queen's Vase would definitely be the race for Andrew Balding's horse. I've got a sneaky feeling he might go to the Melrose at York, and then sort of like maybe progress into a pattern race further down the line. But that time figure that day was extraordinary for the grade. And East India Dock was the only one who offered any resistance to him. Now, he's going to have a bit of a miracle for him to get in. But regardless of that, if he does, great. But if he doesn't, then do keep an eye on him and the winner, Wild Waves, when they run next, because I think they're particularly well handicapped.
The other thing that's just worth mentioning here is that the draw can quite often be very interesting. The horses that are drawn low typically get overbet because people think if you're drawn high, you'll get caught out wide and not get a good posse. But actually, the wider draws have a much more positive P&L return versus the inside draws, because quite often they go too fast on the inside to try and get that position, and then actually the outside draws end up being ridden more optimally. So over the past few years, that's been an increasing trend that will be interesting to see if it persists. People are starting to catch on now. So maybe the outside stalls might not be quite as heavily bet, but it's still certainly an angle when you'll see trainers all week going, oh no, I've been drawn 13 and I'm got no chance, when actually you probably have a positive EV chance versus being drawn 3 over the past 5 years. So that's just an interesting angle to keep an eye on.
Yeah, Jamie's right there. Quickly, George. Massive high draw bias this race, which backs up what Jamie said. I mean, Desert Heroes drawn 21 last year. And normally you look at that and you think, I can't back a horse drawn 21. Your instinct as a punter to avoid a horse right out on the wing here at Ascot on the run down to Swindley Bottom it's almost like when you're playing golf and you think, well, surely the shot is to go for the pin, whereas 9 times out of 10 you just want to be playing safe and playing for the heart of the green. And it's the same here, really, with the same mindset. Because they do get a clear run down into Swindley Bottom, they don't get trapped in on the rails. Getting trapped in on the rails at Ascot is an absolute nightmare when you're trying to make ground coming into the home straight. Still 21 won it last year, 17 3 years ago, then 16, 22, 11, 20, 14, all double figure draws in recent times. So that's a good point that Jamie raises.
Sounds like a high draw exotic to me. Yeah, Jamie looks knowing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Don't despair if you're 22 of 22. Put it that way.
Poneros 9-1, best price out there at the moment, and we also had East India Dock 20-1, best price. So on to the Ribblesdale now. Third race on the card on Thursday, and Diamond Rain is the 19-10 favourite ahead of our Calpana at 6-1. You Got to Me 7-1, Forest Fairy 9-1. Port Fairy 10-1, Rubies are Red 10-1, Sayola 12-1, as is Danielle 16-1. Bar those. Andy, how do you see this?
Well, the favourite had the ultimate form boost, didn't she, with that horse of Roger Varian's absolutely trotting up the other day at Salisbury. I think it might have been yesterday, actually. So
it was.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, I'm really impressed with that Varian horse that won yesterday. I think she's a proper horse. Probably Connections will be kicking themselves that they didn't roll the dice in this race. So yeah, obviously Diamond Rain's got to come under the sort of like closest of scrutiny. Again, it's about price though, isn't it? Whether you want to take such a short price is very much open to question. Obviously, not knowing what's going to run and what isn't here is a bit tricky. I thought Galileo Dame was very, very interesting at a price. She caught the eye at Chester for me 2 runs ago when she didn't handle the track or get the clearest to runs. But she had beaten Ruby's already the time before at Leopardstown in a good figure. And once again, I didn't think everything panned out for the quite as anticipated the day at Garin, but she was beaten by a good filly, Jessica Harrington's. So again, I just think something at a price could easily, step up on what it's already previously done. I've just got a sneaky feeling a strongly run 1.5 miles might suit her. So not a race I've got a particularly strong opinion on at this very moment in time. But if I was going to offer at one, if she did run, it would be Galileo Dame.
Galileo Dame, that is 20 to 1 across the board on the oddschecker grids. Jamie, who do you fancy for this?
Yeah, it wouldn't be my strongest view of the meeting by any means. Diamond Rain, I totally get why she's favourite, but I can't have her at the price. She'll be overbet in the pool. Buick, Appleby on a Godolphin favourite, that will always pay unders with us. I mean, I should say if you bet them with the Tote, you still get SP because we match SP, but it means that also importantly everything else should be value with us because such a large amount of the pool will be taken up by Diamond Rain. And I do like Kalpana up and trip. I think the extra two furlongs will only be a massive help to her. But the one I'd go for would be Forest Fairy if she goes here. She's not jocked up at the moment, so I'm a little bit concerned because Hector Crouch is jocked up on You Got to Me. But hopefully Rossa gets a leg up. And although she was very disappointing at Epsom, her Chester Oaks win was so impressive to me. She did all of her best work at the end. An extra 2 furlongs will be a real benefit to her. She looks like she looked like a highly progressive filly at the time. She just didn't seem to fall in love with Epsom, as so many don't. I think the Oaks run is an easy run to put a line through. Epsom on Oaks Day and Derby Day is such a specific test that so many horses don't handle it. So I'm willing to give her another chance. She's around about 9 to 1. I'm not sure she'll get much shorter than that. So and especially in the World Pool, she could overpay. So maybe I might do Kalpana and Forest Fairy in some swingers and hope that Diamond Rain isn't as good as she might have looked, but I suspect she might be.
Yeah, Forest Fairy, best price 9 to 1 out there. Kalpana 6 to 1, but Forest Fairy. Diamond Rain very much at the top end of that market. On to the Ascot Gold Cup, where Kyprios is the 5 to 6 favourite ahead of Gregory at 6 to 1, Vauban 8 to 1, Trawlerman 10 to 1, Caius Chorister 14, as is Coltrane, Sweet William 16 to 1, Point Lonsdale 20 to 1. Kyprios sure to be popular, Jamie. I'm assuming sure to be overbet with you guys.
Yeah, you're absolutely bang on. Ryan Moore and Aidan O'Brien Fav, this will take up a huge amount of the pool. And with that in mind, I'm going to be looking elsewhere, not because I think Kyprios is going to get beaten. I think he probably does win. His 2 runs this year have been a little bit below previous form, I'd say, but probably still good enough to get the job done here. And he's a bit of a quirk bag, so maybe he just wasn't quite putting it all in. And so far this season, and I wouldn't be surprised to see him go and route this field. But with sort of a bit of value in mind, Coltrane just jumps off the page, isn't he? He's filthy each way shot at 14 to 1. He won this 2 years ago and was second in it last year to Courage Mon Ami. He makes all the sense, and he wouldn't want it too soft, but that's fine. The grounds should be decent for him. And I just think he's going to run his race. Is he good enough to beat Kyprios? No, but I can see him running well. And if you're then looking to add a couple more in with him into maybe some swingers or even trifecta. I mean, a trifecta of something getting Kyprios out of the 3. If he does just fit the bit and doesn't fancy it, that would pay enormous, and it would pay to double with the Tote, I'd say, versus what it would pay with the TriCast or the Exacta or the forecast with the bookies. And if you're going online through Coltrane, Keys Chorister, who was second last time to him, she stacks up well. She's a progressive filly, mare now, 5-year-old. I can see her improving, but is she good enough? Probably not. And then Trawlerman similarly beat Coltrane at the back end of last year at Ascot. He was third in his reappearance, and you can see him running well. I'm probably going to perm those 3 up: Trawlerman, Keys Chorister, and Coltrane in swingers and exactly trifectas.
If that finishes as the 1, 2, 3, I'm sure that'll be the biggest price selection ever tipped up on a racing podcast of all time. So that'll be fun. a couple against the favourite in kind of the tote markets there for Jamie from a kind of a fixed odds betting perspective. And are you looking for some each way value against Kyprios, or do you think the favourite could still be value at 5 to 6?
Yeah, it's just not my kind of bet. Always mentioned on these podcasts, really, we do, but by and large, trying to avoid the short ones. We like to come up with some kind of value angles, don't we? Even if it's a bet without the favourite sometimes. Yeah, I fully respect Kyprios. You'd be a fool not to. Top class horse on his day. Had to miss this race through injury last year, which was a bit of a shame. And he's looked as good as ever on his first 2 runs over in Ireland. His time figures have been very good. So that backs up the view that he is back to his best. You know, it wouldn't shock if he won, but it wouldn't shock if he got beat. Let's face it, he got beat here last year. And the one that beat him, I can't quite understand why Trawlerman's 10-1. I don't think he's done a fat lot wrong. You know, he had all the right horses behind him that day, the likes of Coltrane, which Jamie mentioned. I'm a big fan of Coltrane. But, you know, he's got a mountain to find with Trawlerman strictly on that run here towards the back end of last season. Trusham was in there. All the right horses were in that race. And both he and Kyprios pulled miles clear of the rest. So it struck me as though Trawlerman was at his best that day when it was a proper stamina test, because only 2 survived. They stood the test. I didn't think there was anything wrong with his run out in Maidan beyond Tower of London, and that race has worked out really well. Obviously, Giavolotto finished 5th. He won, I think it was a Lonsdale, wasn't it, the other day at York, beating Tower of London. And he raced wide that day. I think he was drawn wide, and I can't remember who rode him, but they decided to go right the way round and look for some better ground, which kind of worked, but in the end failed. So yeah, I like his profile, I must admit. Godolphin have won this race quite a few times. This is their own representative. I think Gosden's got a very strong hand here, by the way. Gregory, Sweet William, and Trawlerman. But Trawlerman is a guaranteed stay, and he's won at the track, and he likes Ascot, which I think will stand him in good stead. So yeah, I think 10-1 for him is a really good each way alternative.
Interesting to note as well, in that run over at Maidan last time in March, Kieran Schumacher was questioned by the stewards about him riding out to the line as well, having been headed. So, you know, that even that 3.5 length defeat, you might be able to upgrade that a little bit in terms of kind of finishing position. But yeah, Trawlerman 10-1 there with most firms a good each way option to take on the favourite if you're that way inclined. And as Jamie says, probably pays bigger given how much of the market or the lion's share the favourite will take up in the World Pool. On to 3 more races on the card, onto the 5 past 5, which is the Britannia, where Volterra, Native Warrior, Kirat are the 12-1 joint favourites. So I mean, this really is an open affair at this stage. Old Faithful, Skakuza, and Involvement and Starla all 14-1, Mickley 16-1, Dashing Darcy 16-1, as does Follow Me, Cogitate, Test of Love, and a few others there too. I mean, again, finger in the air stuff here, Andy, as to kind of the draw and who we're going to see turn up. But of the entries, who do you think is worth a second look?
Well, by and large, this tends also to go to a horse drawn in double figures, not necessarily towards the stand side per se, but you know, you can win it from 11, 12, but they tend to sort of migrate middle to near side. So that's worth bearing in mind. So I'll be hopeful that a couple of the horses that I like here do get decent draws. My main pick here, and it has been for a little while, ever since he won at Newmarket last time out, a horse of Ed Dunham's called Stakuza. I put him up on my column that day. So there's a little bit of favouritism attached to him. But he's just running the right races. And I do like his straight track form. I think any horse that's won at that Raleigh Mile, Newmarket, strongly run affairs, by and large, tends to have the right kind of profile for a race like this. And I think he beat a good field last time out. The horse that finished third, one of Charlie Johnson's, called Aristide, he went on to win at Lingfield the other day. And I like the way Stakuza hit the line, and went back and looked at the sectionals that he did that day, and he's back end 3 furlongs were by far and away the quickest on the card. So combined with a good strong overall and a good back end sectional, Stakuza has come out of that race suggesting that he's potentially a pattern race horse in the making. He's got a mark of 90. Will Buick has been booked as well, so that's obviously a positive sign of intent. And the other one I quite like, who is a little bit of an unknown for most UK punters because he's been winning up the north and in smaller venues, is Mickley. Now, Ed Bethell is definitely a trainer going places, we all know. And he's got a very, very nice 3-year-old in his hands here. A big, strong, stocky type that I think is open to a huge amount of improvement. He won over 7 furlongs in his seasonal reappearance the other day. I did notice that the fourth horse, Love Billy Boy, won at Chester over the weekend. So again, that form line has worked out really well. The time was good, and he won it with loads of swagger. He got there travelling well, powered his way to the line without really Callum Rodriguez having to go for too much on him. And he strikes me as being another one that could easily improve, stepping up in trip. So they're available to back as time of recording. 14 to 1 for Stakuza, Mickley's 16 to 1, but you might probably get something like 6 or 7 places on the day with some firms that are going to stick their head out. So those would be my 2. Not necessarily now, because I think you're better off waiting for the day for those 2. But I'm looking to get with those 2, come rain or shine.
Yeah, 2 against the field there for Andy. Jamie, how do you see it?
Yeah, interestingly, Ed Bethel and Callum Rodriguez have, as you kind of might expect, given where they're based and their visibility to Hong Kong punters, they've overpaid on every single one of their runners in Whirlpool to date. So you can expect the Mickley will be no different and will pay well with the Tote. I'm going for this is slightly against what I believe in tipping a favourite in a handicap, but he's 12 to 1, and that's Native Warrior. And I thought Andy might go for him, given his form ties in with Persica as well, who was given a good shout out earlier. He was Native Warrior was 3/4 of length behind Persica at Kempton, who when they were behind the Guineas Winner Notable Speech, and that horse has since gone on to win Epsom off a mark of 92, and Native Warrior comes here off a mark of 90. He'd been seen once since then when he won a neck. He could have won any distance. It turned out to be a neck, but he did it very, very comfortably. And I'd say a mark of 90 is massively underestimating him. And just on pure collateral form with Persica, he looks to be £10 well in. So he'd be my idea of it. It's the Britannia. Anything can happen, and draw will play a part. But I think Native Warrior 12 to 1 is a very good bet.
12 to 1, yeah. Native Warrior there in the Britannia, one of the many Wathnan horses turning up with a very good chance. You'd think at Royal Ascot, big week for them. This week now. Wow, it's upon us. On to the Hampden Court now, if I can get the grid up, where we have got King's Gambit, who we've spoken about or touched upon already in the show, is the 3 to 1 favourite ahead of another Wathnan horse in First Look, who's 4 to 1. Bracken's Laugh, 7 to 1. J. Raby is 8 to 1. Al Mumsak, 14 to 1, Taraj 14 to 1, Cambridge 14 to 1, a couple of others 14 to 1 too. But an interesting match at the top end here, Jamie. How do you see it?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I'd love King's Gambit here for all the reasons that Andy mentioned earlier around the form of the London Gold Cup. I think that's a proper piece of form. It always is, but this year especially, it looks phenomenally strong. As Harry looks to repeat what his father did with time tests, and I suspect he probably will. So I wouldn't put anyone off backing him at 3 to 1. In the interest of looking for one at a slightly bigger price, I really like Sons and Lovers for Jane Chapel-Hyam. Jane's such a shrewd trainer. I remember 2 years ago she had 3 runners at the Royal Meeting, and there were 2 wins and a second. And I think the second was in the Britannia. It was in the Hunt Cup. It was unbelievable what she does, and she doesn't send something here if it's got no chance. And Sons and Lovers is formed with was just beaten by Al McCam on debut. Al McCam goes in the St James's Palace, and ultimately I think he's a progressive horse who will enjoy the step up, the extra 2 furlongs. He looks to have been doing all his best work at the end of his races. He's around 16 to 1. I can see him running a big race for a very shrewd operator. Yeah,
16 to 1, Sons and Lovers, and 3 to 1 King's Gambit. Andy, are you going to continue the positivity around the King's Gambit form here, or is the price not enough to get you on board?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's all about context, isn't it, really? Look, I'm a massive fan of King's Gambit, and there's no denying he did a massive number at Newbury, and I don't want to contradict myself, but, it was a sensational piece of form regards handicaps. But then when you look at what other horses have done, as it stands at the moment, i.e. First Look, he's finished second in a really, really good jockey club, French jockey club, i.e. their French derby, and yet he's bigger. So what you've got to think is, well, would have King's Gambit finished second in a race like that last time out? Quite possibly. but you couldn't say for absolute definite. There's a lot of presumption attached to that. So I think the market is probably slightly overreacted to King's Gambit in some respects. Would he shock me if he won? Absolutely not. But would I back him at 5-2? Probably not. I'd rather back Ponyross, who finished second, like I say, that 8-10-1 in a handicap, where he's off his old mark. Whereas this boy's now going from winning a handicap to running against the big boys. It's like I say, it's all about price really, and just using your brains a little bit. So I'd be more than prepared to perhaps look outside the box, and I can't believe that JRB's gone to a bad horse overnight just off the back of one slightly poor run. You often get that when you get a horse who hits the ball out of the park on the numbers first time out, and the expectation levels are so high next time out. It's a massive come down and a disappointment when they don't run to the same level. And you think, God, is the figure wrong, or is the horse that I looked at not quite the horse that I thought? But it's often the case that they just can't run to that same level again, and they end up having to regather their thoughts, get their breath back, and then go again next time out. But as it stands as well with him, you look at the form of that Fielden Stakes. You know, he beat Caviar Heights by 4 lengths, and that's gone on to win next time out. 6 lengths back was Ambient Friendly, who dotted up in the Lingfield Derby trial and finished an incredibly good second in what I think was an above-average derby this season. I still think that's the best form, other than the French Derby form, which First Look holds. So if you can forget his Chester run, and don't forget that was a slightly different dynamic in the sense that he didn't dominate. Capulet made the running. I think it was a really good ride by Ryan Moore. So he didn't quite have the race run to suit him. But with a good draw, surely Levy might be able to dictate or do something a little bit more beneficial to JRB. But I still have faith in him. I still think, that number that he did in Newmarket was tremendous. And if he can run back to that level, then I don't see him as an 8-1 shot. So I think the value definitely lies with First Look and JRB.
JRB 8-1 currently. First Look 4-1. So a couple to take on the field with there from Andy. Finally, we've got the Buckingham Palace Stakes, the last race on the card on Thursday, where we have Never So Brave just about favourite at 6-1 ahead of English Oak at 13-2. And then 14-1, a few horses, Divine Libra, Metal Merchant, Northern Express, Muster Bashir, 16-1 bar those. Jamie, how do you see the final race on the card?
Well, it has an interesting betting makeup because there will be a lot of the sort of well-punted jockeys on reasonably big prices, which means that they will get slightly overbet, particularly the likes of Holly Doyle. And when you get them on so we talked a lot about when you get well-bet horses being at the front of the market, taking up a lot of it. But it's always interesting when you get them on bigger price, like 20-1 shots, because they quite often get shorter, and then it can make everything else value in weird ways that you don't quite expect. So with that in mind, I wouldn't put anyone off the front of the market, but just for a bit of value, I've been looking elsewhere. And one that I've got a real soft spot for, who I think is due to run a really big race, is Magical Sunset. I hope she goes here rather than Duke of Cambridge, because she's got a mark of 100, and she's only run once in a handicap before, and that was in last year's Sandringham when she was technically 8th off a mark of 102, but she was first of 11 in her group on her side. She ran a mighty race. She just was unlucky that she was drawn where she was. She was beaten on racecourse debut by Sakir, which is a pretty unfortunate horse to bump into first time out at Windsor. But she's always looked like a proper group horse, and she's proven that. And a mark of 100, like if she's back to anything like her best form, I can see her running a big race. And similarly, another one sort of dropping down the handicap a little bit, but with a lot of back class, is by Pedro. For David O'Mara. I'm a bit of a sucker for O'Mara runners. But basically anything he puts his name to, I'll probably throw some shekels at. But by Pedro, I thought was particularly interesting. He was 4th in the Hunt Cup last year off a mark of 102. He comes here off 96, and he won off 98 at the back end of last year. He's been dropped quite quickly, all things considered. And these O'Mara horses have a funny way of coming back to themselves when it really matters. And I wonder whether this might be Bo Pedro's day. with Jason Watson booked. I suspect he'll be a big old price in the Whirlpool, whatever he is with the bookies. He'll be bigger with the Tote, I'd imagine. And they would be my 2 against the field: Magical Sunset by Pedro. But geez, there's lots to shoot out there.
Yeah, I mean, Magical Sunset's 50-1 across the board on the grids, and Bo Pedro 25-1. And actually, going back to Magical Sunset's first run at Windsor, she actually beat Sakir. It wasn't the.
She beat Sakir, didn't she?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, that was it.
So even better.
Yeah.
But yeah, a couple of big price fancies there for Jamie in the last. Andy, take us away.
Yeah, a lot depends on what connections are going to do with English Oak. I think he holds the key to this race, and potentially the Wokingham as well. I think the Wokingham has been mooted at maybe his long-term objective ever since he won at Haydock. Perhaps ever since he finished runner-up here on his first attempt at running Ascot. So at least he's got straight track Ascot form when he got beat by Rohan last season. He's done nothing but improve since. I do like Ed Walker's handicappers. I do like Ed Walker in general. But I think he's got a well-handicapped horse here. The way he won at Haydock, the time he did, he just looked a pattern race horse in the making. Walham Racing aren't stupid. They want to get hold of these kind of horses, which they have done. So if he was to run here and bypass the Wokingham, I'd be very interested. Others to mention, I think you've always got to factor in the Victoria Cup. Unlike any other races that are run at this Royal meeting, with regards Royal Ascot form in general terms, I think this specialist trip of 7 furlongs, you have to have horses predominantly who run well over the track time and time again. I think the winner often comes from that sort of bracket of horses. So you've got to be thinking Streets of Gold will run well here at a price. He was a very eye-catching 6 behind the Wizard of Eye in the Victoria Cup. Now, the Wizard of Eye, I think, is going to go. I think he's going for is it the Golden Jubilee on the Saturday, which is the Group 1? Unless Charlie Fellows has totally lost his marbles.
I think goes for the QE2.
Yeah, that's the race. Sorry,
yeah.
I can never remember its name. It changes year in, year out. But that's the race, the Group 1 on the Saturday. We're dropping back in trip. So, Charlie obviously feels as though his horses have got a chance in the Group 1. So this lad only got beat, 2 lengths behind an improving horse, and he was third in the Jersey last year behind Angel Kings. Again, another eye-catching run that day. So his 2 course and distance runs have been against a horse who runs in a Group 1 next time, and in a Group 2 last season. So he runs here off a handicap mark of 104. As we've seen before, Eve Johnson Horton's more than capable of winning races like this, with that accidental agent over the years. So he looks fairly solid, even though his form figures look a bit patchy. But if you actually break it down and look at his 7 furlong Ascot form, it's really good in the context of today's race. So I'd be more than happy to have a look at him. But yeah, without repeating myself, English Oak very much holds the key to this race if he runs here or doesn't.
Also on the Wizard of Eye, Ryan Moore's been booked. He's not officially jocked up yet, but Charlie Fellows said that Ryan Moore was going to be booked. So that shows you there's some confidence behind him. So could give that form a mighty boost.
Yeah.
Interesting. Good stuff. Well, that brings our day 3 preview to a close. Thank you very much to Andy and to Jamie for sharing their tips, thoughts and insights. We're going to be recording day 4 now, so you can find all of these previews on the oddschecker YouTube channel. Thank you very much to the Tote for sponsoring the shows. Make sure you do check out the Tote, download the app, have a play around. As Jamie says, not just the racing side of things, but also a sports book too. So you've got plenty on there to get stuck into, including that brilliant offer with having a £5 bet on an England game. You get a £1 free play spot for every goal that England score. So hopefully we can score more than one on Thursday afternoon. Thank you to Andy. As well, you can find his tips on the oddschecker app every morning of racing, or for Ascot, I assume it'll be the evening before. And enjoy the racing. We'll be back for day 4 shortly, but please do ensure that you're gambling responsibly.